And we're live. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. You made it through the week. Congratulations. Thank you for joining us today for our food safety chat. If you're new to the chat, my name is Bryan Armentrout, and I run the Food Leadership Group, a food safety consulting group in the FDA space. And every Friday at this time, so 8 a.m. Mountain Time, where it's a chilly 29 degrees here in Colorado, we do a 1 hour talk on a food safety topic, and we bring in an expert and we kind of, dissect it and give you some helpful hints. So one of the things that's very true in the food industry, right, is food safety is not a point of competition, because if someone in your industry has a recall, right, if you're an ice cream manufacturer and there's an ice cream recall, in the minds of the consumers, you're just as guilty as they are, even if you have fantastic food safety systems. So in a lot of ways, we work together on these type of things, right? Which is why we go to conferences and trade information, right? And this is a way to help trade information. And so today I'm very happy to have Luisa Tapia from ACET Consulting. So she's the president over there, and she's also a food safety consultant. So Luisa, how are you doing today?
Fine, thank you, Bryan. It's a pleasure to be here today and to be able to help some folks if they have any questions. And you're right, the food industry is so small that one little thing can make a big impact in everybody. So I'm really happy to be able to help.
Absolutely. So one of our things that we love to do here on the show, right? And you'll notice this is very different than your normal presentation, right? This is actually a discussion, and we encourage and welcome your questions. So you should have the on either LinkedIn or on YouTube, depending on where you're watching. You can type in your questions for us as we're going along, and we'll work those into the conversation when we can. But definitely, please do that. One of the things that we love to do as well is let us know where you're at in the world, because it's always amazing, Luisa. All over the world, right? We have people from Africa and India and you name it who join our conversation. So we're really happy to see that. So I, of course, as I said, I'm in Colorado, where winter is starting yesterday morning. So I'm kind of by the foothills here in Colorado, right? So most people live next to the mountains. They don't live in the mountains. So kind of as you go along the front range, as we call it here, that's where most people live. And you could kind of look up at the foothills and you could see Long's Peak from where I live, and they got some snow up there. And it was kind of flirting a little bit here down in the city. You can see a little bit of snowflakes. So the season is here. So it's very dark where you're at, Luisa. Where are you?
I'm in Dallas, Texas, and yesterday was so bright and sunny. We were at around 85, and today we're at 50 with a thunderstorm right now. That's why it's so dark here. And we dropped 20 degrees. That for Dallas is a lot for one night. Yeah. And it's getting cold, so at least we start feeling fall, because it has been really hot here. So that's why it's really dark. I'm trying to turn on all the lights, but it's still dark outside.
I used to travel down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area quite a bit for work, and I used to love the barbecue down there. Oh, I love it, right? You go to those barbecue places, right, for lunch. It's not cheap, but boy, you get some good food, right? And you just go up to the barbecue pit, and you're like, give me some of that, give me some of that, it's wonderful. I love it. Good morning, Austin, my friend up here in Denver. So Austin's with Sage Media. They do some wonderful things with training and around food safety culture. So glad to see Austin here. He's a great guy. So let's dive. Luisa, I always do this, right? I want to get into the topic right away, but please, everybody, join us for a ceremonial Friday morning drink with us. So tea and water. I have water today.
Water. I have tea.
We always make that little noise, don't we? It's like when you kiss your significant other, right? You go, mwah, right? And why? Why do we make that noise? I don't know. It's not really part of it, but it is. It's kind of a weird thing. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's like making sure everybody see how much you love the other one.
Absolutely. So today's topic is something that in your systems, it's a love-hate relationship, right? It's kind of one of those things that it's like going to the dentist. You got to do it, right? And if you don't do it, you're going to regret it. And that's internal audits, right?
Yes, exactly. Internal audits. We hate it, but we have to do it. And it could be your best friend or your worst enemy, literally.
Ooh, right. And it's kind of one of those things too, Luisa, that if you fall behind on it, you can't catch up, right? And
Exactly.
then when it comes time for your third party audit, so SQF comes in or whoever, and they ask you the question when they get to that section, and you're just like, oh, yeah,
Why I
right.
didn't cut it before?
And out comes the auditor pen, right? And
And like,
it's shooting fish in a barrel for an auditor, right? So part of it, we're going to talk about this today, and the kind of the name I gave this conversation today was right. Internal audit's a force for good, and don't use it for evil. Internal audit is kind of one of those things that really goes back a long time, right? Because part of this, I mean, it goes back to ISO 9001 standards, right? It's been around forever, and it's a challenge, as we talked about, right? So I think one of the biggest issues with this is part of it is with internal audits, if you're the quality manager in the plant, you tend to take this on your own shoulders, right? You're like, hey guys, we need to do our internal audits and things like this. And the quality manager doesn't get a lot of cooperation, right? Because I'm busy and I can't, and they end up doing all the audits themselves, which is absolutely 100% wrong.
Yes, and one of the biggest things is that a lot of people still thinking that it's a quality program, that whole food safety system, instead of making it a system that works pieces by departments. So when and it's very common when the food safety manager say like internal audits, everybody start putting a face like, why? I don't have time to do it, because it's not an easy thing, and it's nothing that you can do like in 15 minutes. You have to take your time to make sure that you talk to people, you review records, you make sure that they are following the procedures. And being also, as I had been at an auditor too, and also in the other side of the table, as I name it, as a QA manager. And it was very difficult to make them understand that every single department is part of the system. And the internal audit, what it do is that they open our eyes to see if we are following our own process. That is a main key.
Yeah, I mean, so two really important things that you said in that. Systems, right? So part of what I preach on this channel, right, is that it's your quality system, right? It's not you, right? It's how you operate your business. And everything is integrated, right? When you really take a look at the standards and you look at the different systems and sections and how everything fits together, they're all interdependent. And you need to make sure that that system is working correctly. So one of the things that I always preach too, right, is in quality, sometimes we get too fancy. And, we get enamored with Six Sigma black belt tools and talking CPKs and all these types of things, but it's the basics that make a good quality system. And that's plan, do, check, act, right? If you don't understand what you're doing and how you do it and make sure that you're doing it, right? Food safety, food quality, it doesn't matter. Everything falls apart. And one of the things that if this happens in your operations, you're kind of stuck, right? It's really hard to get out, because if you have a hidden factory, as I refer to it, right? So I'm a floor manager, and Luisa, you come to work for me, and we do some training and onboarding and things like that. And I ask you, it's like, okay, well, did you read the work instruction for this process? And you're like, yes, I did. And I say, great. Don't follow that. Let me show you how we really do stuff, right?
Yes.
If that happens, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble, right? Because when your audit rolls around, you're just going to get absolutely slammed, and you're going to have no idea why.
Exactly. And one of the biggest things is that the managers that owns their own section and the standards and the system, when they go around, they start blaming the QA manager, because like, why you didn't change it? It's like, I'm not in charge of your department. It's going to be you, because it's a system. So, and the other part is that when you had to make sure not only the managers of the other department, even including HR, because HR is one of the biggest pieces for the training department, and then the sales guys and marketing. So every single department, even at a corporate level, are part of the system. So when they do something that they send us a policy, a program, and then they do a completely different thing, we don't have the power as a QA by ourselves to make it happen.
Right.
And the internal audit, what it do is like show them that we have a gap there that we can fix. We can adjust the programs as what is really happening, and it's not a problem.
Yep.
but
Well,
but
and
that is a big
yes.
piece.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, you hit on, boy, we're speaking the same language here. Um, Ownership, right? A lot of times, and this is a fatal flaw with people who work in food safety and quality and things like this. We do what we do because we really care, right? We want
Uh-huh.
to produce good product. We want to produce safe product. We want to make our customers happy. And if
Yes.
something isn't happening, we tend to take it on ourselves, right? It's like,
Yes.
oh, nobody's doing this, so I'm going to do it myself. And everybody else is like, okay, fine, you go do that, right? It's the quality system, and you're the quality manager, therefore it's your job. No, 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 no.
Yeah,
Absolutely not.
exactly. It's no, but it's different. It's very difficult for them. And another part is that when you make them join the team, I literally had to bribe some people. Like when I was a QA manager, like
Oh
I will
yeah.
give you breakfast as an
Mhm.
opening meeting. Can you come for the audit? So until they start seeing really what is happening and you get that people involved is when it's
Mhm.
really happening. And one of the other part is that when you have to audit like corporate levels or a program that they handle or the senior manager is like how I'm going to tell them, my boss, that he's not following process. But if they
Yeah,
don't follow process, we are going to have a big gap that it can break the whole system.
absolutely. Yeah. And you should be excited, right? Your team should be excited when you find gaps, right? That's something that, oh, good, we found that. The auditor didn't find it or the customer didn't find it, right? You're able to fix those things
Mhm.
internally, right?
Internally.
And right, your systems, right? And this is very evident now with FSMA. Your systems are not limited to the plant. So if you are working in a company of any size, odds are you got a lot of centralized functions. So
Mhm.
procurement, R&D, corporate quality, legal, communications, sales, marketing, right? On and on and on. And those people, if you're at the plant, Luisa, right, and you're the quality manager at the plant, those people have tremendous influence over you and how things are
Yeah.
being
Mhm.
done. And in the past, when you would be going through the audit and you get to supplier approval, it's like, oh, well, that's all corporate, right? And the auditor would say, oh, okay, well,
That's fine.
that's
Mhm.
fine. No,
No
that's not going
anymore.
to work anymore, right? And it's definitely not going to work with FDA. You have to be
Yes,
able to
exactly.
explain that.
Exactly. And it's not that you own the system, is that you are at the part of the implementation. So you need to prove them that that implementation is there because
Right.
you own that part in the plan. So that is the main key when you're doing internal audits. And the internal audits is not only for SQF or global BRC. It's also for when you have like kosher, you have halal, gluten-free, organic, because it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Every single certification is part of the system.
Mhm.
So the main key is that make it understand the whole team, your management team, that is a system, that
Right.
everybody owns a piece.
Yep. And you need to, right? So if you're the quality manager at the plant, right, you need to get management buy-in, which means you need to be talking with your plant manager and saying, I need help on this, right? Don't take it all on
Exactly.
yourself and say, I need all of the management team to be involved in this. And if you can go down lower than that, perfect, right? You
Perfect. Yeah.
need a large team. The more people on your team, the better, right?
Better. Yes.
And at least one person needs to be trained in how to do internal audits,
Internal
right?
audits.
It's not simple, right? It's
No.
you have to be able to get the information.
Exactly. And when you and a lot of people say, okay, I'm trained, I know how to do GMPs, the monthly
Mhm.
inspection of the plant. So it's a big difference between an inspection and an audit because an inspection is what I'm seeing at this moment, at this picture is what is happening. But we
Mhm.
don't know what happened before or after or what is going to happen after, right?
Yeah.
So the internal audit, what it do is like, okay, good, your GMP is part of the implementation. We wanted to make sure that when you see it, it reflects in your procedures. So the internal audit is like, now show me with data, with a bunch of records for several months, that what I'm seeing right now is always happening, is
Mhm.
happening like that, right? and
Yeah.
and that is why they really need to understand how to do an audit instead of an only GMP inspection, because the making sure how programs connect to each other. It's not a checklist, because a lot of people think the internal audit is a checklist. Like, I have it. It's no. It's, if you have it, make sure that it's in authorized documentation, that people is trained, you have records of training, you have records of the program. So that is a big difference between internal audit and GMP. So that's why it's very important to have the people train on what to look for. What is the evidence part?
Yep, because what you're doing, right, is you're taking your procedure and saying, okay, what is this saying we do? All right, now let's go out and see that we do that. And now, do we have the documentation that shows that we did it correctly? And if we didn't do it correctly, are we actually following up with corrective actions, right? Plan, do, check, act. And for me as an outsider, right, if you're looking at another company, let's say that you have a supplier and they have a deviation and they send you some materials that are out of spec or something, and you send them a corrective action, and it comes back a day or two later and it says retrain personnel.
Oh yeah.
I go, really?
Again?
I mean, that tells me that, yeah, they have a very ineffective program, right? And they're just making stuff. Oh yeah, we're retrain those people. Really? That's the root cause, huh?
Yeah, and that is another important part of the internal audit. Make sure that when you find the non-conformance, the gap, you really do a root cause analysis, because normally everywhere I go, I always see training. So everybody blame the poor employee.
Yeah.
He's always the one that make the mistake, instead of making sure that maybe the process, as you said in the beginning, like, this is a procedure, read it, good. We don't do that like that. We don't do things like that. We do this ones. So it's not really that is the employee's fault, and the internal audit will show it when we do the root cause analysis. That is another piece of it that is very important.
Right. And I think probably the most effective internal audit programs understand that relationship, right? Because as we were talking about earlier, if I'm your boss and you're working for me, that's what you care about, right? I'm the person who controls your livelihood, right? If I'm happy, you're happy. If I'm mad, your life is not comfortable, right? So it's very important to get down to that level and make sure, right, that things are functioning correctly. And that ties back to how you're developing your systems, because if you sit in your office as a quality manager and say, oh, okay, well, let's see, we need to get certified to SQF. I'm going to write a whole bunch of documents and then give them to everybody. Oh, you're in trouble, because there's this false belief, Luisa, that if I write something down, it means people are going to do it. And are you in for a rude awakening if you think that's true? Yes.
And they will say, like, do you think this is possible? Like, I'm doing the best I can, but is when you also need to learn as a QA manager, because it's very frustrated as a QA, because when you see that things are not happening, you jump in and do it yourself, right? Yeah. And we try to make the perfect world. So there is no gaps between what we write, right? But to put it in place, it's impossible, because it's not feasible. So that is another bad thing about internal audits. When it's not happening, the QA will jump. And one thing that all the standards and the certification require us is make sure that the people that audit do not audit their own job.
Yes.
Because it's the same thing. We can have a nice procedure, but we were not being following it. But because it's nice, we say, yes, we have it. So that is one of the biggest things, like, do not audit your own job.
Yeah, never, which is why you need a big team.
Exactly.
You need enough people to be able to go and look at other things. And one of the selling points I always use with internal audits is, this is an amazing opportunity to step into your fellow manager's shoes and see the world from their view, right? Which is what every good auditor gets good at. So if I'm the quality manager and I'm going to be auditing the maintenance program, I now am going to get a deeper understanding of how they do things, because part of human nature is we tend to minimize what other people do. It's, the procurement group, all they do is go out and have fancy lunches with people, and they buy a few things, and then we get the bad product, and And that applies for people in quality and food safety too. It's like, quality and food safety, right? All they do is make up a bunch of rules and then yell at us. Yeah, I wish I worked in quality. That would be great. It opens people's eyes, because you have to go in and read that document and say, okay, how does the preventive maintenance program work? And then you sit down with the maintenance manager and say, can you please walk me through your systems and show me? And This gets back to something I preach a lot as well, which is tell your story, right? The documents are not there to tell the story. The documents are there to provide a bridge. And that person needs to be able to tell the story of how they do things, why they do them that way, and also why they don't do other things, right? And the example I use on this is procurement, right? There are different levels of risk with different ingredients and different levels of scrutiny. You're not going to spend a whole lot of time if you're buying salt versus non-fat dry milk, right? You're going to ask for more documentation and more proof that it's safe if you're dealing with a non-fat dry milk. It's the same with your systems, right? How are you evaluating those for that criticality? And how do you understand that? And how do you, again, right? How do you prove that you did it? So if you're sitting down with the maintenance manager and going through the preventive maintenance system, I want to see the procedure. I want to marry that up and match it to what he's saying. And then looking at tickets, right? So with most PM programs, it's like, oh, okay, we have work orders and those get assigned and people get things done. And if they didn't, it goes back on the list. Awesome. Show me. I want to see all of this, right?
Exactly.
And people love to talk about what they do, right? So that's why this training piece, Luisa, is so important too, right? Is because you have to be diplomatic, right? You can't go in there, right?
Give it to me. Yeah.
Right. So, all right, well, this says you're doing this and this and this, and you need to do this and why, right? Everybody's gonna be like, right? No, and that's why, right, for third-party auditors, the best auditors marry up two things, and this applies to quality managers too, is technical skills and people skills, right?
Exactly.
And
yes, and when you have an internal audit team, it's very valid to see their attributes too. Because at one point, maybe everybody's like so excited to jump in, and then they figure out like they are not good at talking to people. They get too nervous or they get too aggressive. I had seen different points, right? And it's like, if you don't feel comfortable, it's fine to say, I can't. Like, this is not my job, okay? So I remember seeing one employee that he was not very able, and he wasn't sure how to review documents, right? But when he had to interview people, he can make that stones talk, right? So everybody was very comfortable when he interviewed the people. So they have like two auditors at the same time. One's making sure that they are following the procedure, and the other one is making talk. So that is the main key here. And the other part is being at the auditee also feel comfortable of talking of what they are doing, because that's another piece. They like to talk. Sometimes they talk too much, and sometimes they say yes and no. They don't answer anything else. So the internal audits also help the auditees to feel comfortable with their own programs.
Oh, that's a great point, because essentially this is practice for the people on the floor, right? So when the SQF or whoever auditor shows up, or FDA, right, somebody even more serious, they're used to that process, right?
Exactly.
And they are more comfortable. Great point. Part of this too, and one of the things, Luisa, that I would use to sell these programs to people too, is a lot of times people would come to me and say, hey, Bryan, I'm ambitious and I want to grow. I want to advance in the company. What's a good way to do that? Internal audit is a great way to do that, because part of becoming a better leader, a better manager, and moving up in a company is you have to expand your vision, right?
Yes.
If you're a production manager and you're really, really good at production, that's good. But do you understand quality? Do you understand procurement? Do you understand logistics? Do you understand all of these other functions, right, that you need to be able to speak to? If you have the attitude of, I'm the operations manager and that's all that matters and I don't care about anybody else, guess what? You're going to be an operations manager for the rest of your career, right? You need to open your perspective, because you need to be able to talk. If you're in a plant management meeting or a corporate meeting, and you're able to share perspectives and improvements and ideas outside of your function, you're showing tremendous value to the company, and people notice that.
Yes, and that's true. And also, you start knowing the other departments. So to make sure what is your path you wanted to go. You wanted to go to sales, to marketing, or you want to go to logistics. So that is a big one. And the other piece is that also make you work with your co-partner, right? And a lot of the time, maintenance is against everybody. So like that department, everybody blames them, right? Everything
Yeah.
is their issue. But when they start working together, they understand each other. So operations say like, now I understand that when I ask you for a work order, you cannot do it in 24 hours because based on your schedules, your PMs, you know when you're going to target the equipment. You
Mhm.
can make a temporary fix, but now I understand why you do it like that, and vice versa. Like maintenance will know why operation is like screaming, like why you haven't fixed it. So
Right.
the internal audit also helps that. One of the things that they are pushing, like all the standards, is that food safety culture. So part of the internal audit will be part is like the internal culture. You know each other work. You start respecting each other's work, and you're
Mhm.
respecting the people on the floor that are implementing what you are asking them to do.
Yeah.
That's another point. And going to the people on the floor, it's very common when you are doing internal audits that they are used to see the QA manager approach to them, right?
Yeah.
And they don't feel threat anymore. But when they see the real auditor with 20 people in the back or 5 people in the back, the management team watching them, yeah, exactly. They're freaking out, that poor employees. So when they start seeing the same management team going around asking them questions about their job in the internal audit, it's a training for them too. So don't be
Right.
afraid. Whatever you say is fine. And because I see that phase that they are start getting you like 5 words and they look at the manager like I keep going or I shut up, right? And
Right.
everybody's is looking at them. So it's important to make sure that also the people on the floor during the internal audit they feel comfortable during the interviews.
Right. And that's a great point, Luisa, because part of this, right, is you
Hmm.
have your team and it's the quality manager, you're the leader of the team. Again, you're not
Hmm.
doing audits, you're the leader of the team. As this information starts coming back in from the internal audit, the team is able to look at this as a system, back to your point,
Hmm.
and saying, is this system working or is it broken? Right. So let's say, for example, you go and you're doing, again, you're talking with the maintenance department. You're like, gosh, you have all these work orders and you're only closing out 70% of them. What's going on? And then you're going to get all this information, right? So the maintenance manager is going to go, oh my God, I lost 5 people. I can't find anybody new. We're way behind. I'm telling the plant manager, but he's not hearing me, and we're not hiring anybody. And everybody on my team is super stressed. Blah, right? All this comes out.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
And the plant manager, right? As this team, you can go back to the plant manager now and say, hey, listen, Sally. This is the information I'm getting back from the maintenance team. Oh, the maintenance, they're always complaining, right? They've got enough
Hmm.
people. Well, no, they don't, right? Look how far
I have
behind we
evidence.
are on our
Hmm.
maintenance. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, those people are really stressing, right? We
Yes.
need to
Hmm.
figure out a way to help them. And that's culture, right?
Yes,
That's
culture.
food
Hmm.
safety culture, right? So you're seeing a potential problem, right? And this gets into again systems, right?
Hmm.
Preventative action. If we don't fix the PM program and get caught up on our PMs, something's going to break. A pump's going to go
Hmm.
down. A line's going to break. A filler's going to go down. We need to get ahead of this now.
Yes. And we can even have a food safety issue because
Yeah,
if the equipment can be start like coming apart, so then we
yeah,
have maybe metal or plastic, like, and when we have a recall, and you don't want to get to that point. So the
yeah,
internal audit is really making sure that your system is there. A lot of people normally when I'm doing the training, like how often I need to do it because the standards say once a year. Yes, once a year, but do it when you are sure you need it based on your risk. how
right,
how often you do PMs? You do PMs every single day, right? So
right.
how many records, how many PMs a day you do, a month, a week? So based on risk, how often do you think this system needs to be uh, audit? It maybe
Yeah,
can be audited 3 times a year to make sure that you are able to follow up. And then maybe they say one times a year, right? But
yeah,
when they say one time a year and they do it and they see this big gap, like we don't have mechanics, we don't have material, the budget is out, and they say okay, because you already communicate to senior management, then you can change the schedule of that internal audit. So
right.
we have so many nonconformities that instead of making it once a year, let's audit it 2 or 3 times a year. And that's
Right.
very valid. That's why your internal audit is based on what do you need? What are you finding that this system, this program can help you prevent it? So
Uh,
your internal audit is to prevent that is grow and grow and grow.
right. And that's a great point, right? So as you're putting together your schedule, right? So we've talked about, right? So step one, right? You need to have an internal audit program. And I don't care if you're GFSI certified or whatever, you need an internal audit program no matter what. So then your next step is to get together with the plant manager, if you're at a plant, and put together and say, hey, listen, we need a program and I need 100% participation, right? Nobody gets out of this, the entire management team, et cetera, et cetera. And you need the plant manager saying, yep,
Yes.
I will support you 100% on this. Great. And then you start introducing this to the team. And then assuming that I'm already trained, right? I've taken an external course or something on how to be a good auditor. I can now train my team. Ideally, right? If you have the resources, get everybody trained, right?
Exactly.
You're going to have as much effort as you put in is what you're going to get out, right? So you got to do that. And you touched on the next point of what you need to be doing, right? So now you've got your team. So now as the quality manager and the leader of the team, right? I keep emphasizing that with the line there. Right? You're not doing it, you're leading it, is how to then put together your schedule, right? So what I would do, and so under the standards, it will say, okay, you need to audit everything. And a lot of people interpret that saying, oh my God, I need to audit every single document. No. You need to audit every section. Right.
Exactly.
And to your point, Luisa, right? The more important the section, the more times you should be auditing it. So then I will put together my teams, and it's always a team, right? I want to have 2 people on a team, just not one person. That way it can help break up the work, and you can have one person asking questions while another person is taking notes on the procedure, and then they can get together and decide on their findings. And I never would put 2 people together from the same department.
No.
And to your point, you cannot audit your own stuff. Right? You need to audit other programs. And then I would put together a matrix, right? I would list out the year and all the different sections and who was doing what, and then plan it out for that month. And then I would get with the teams and say, okay, Bill and Sally, you guys are going to be auditing document control, and Henry and Bob, you're going to be auditing PM, et cetera, right? And break it all up. And then my job was to make sure that they got that done, right? So
exactly.
Part of that, and the best way, right, and we've referenced this several times as well, the best way to get someone to cooperate and get things done is to make sure that their boss is on board. So if you have all the different management leads in the plant and supervisors and things like this needs to be a KPI. And it needs to be gone over every month in the staff meetings and say, okay, Bryan, how's internal audit going? Well, we're a little behind. What? Why is that? Why are we behind on internal audits? Well, there was a vacation and a sickness and things like that. Okay, well, who's on that team? Who's doing that? That was Bill and Sally. Okay, and then the plant manager turns to them and says, okay, Bill and Sally, you're getting your audit done this week, right? You have to have that backup, because nothing worse, right? It's a terrible spot to be in, Luisa, where I'm coming to you and I'm like, Luisa, I'm looking at the schedule here and I see that you haven't done your internal audit yet for the month. Oh yeah, I'm super busy. I got some other stuff, and I'll get it done. Oh, geez, that would be great. You know, you're reduced to whining, right? To try and begging and pleading, and
please, do it.
Nobody likes that. Nobody on either side, right?
But I think a lot is going to be the training part, that really showing them what they need to do, because a lot of people, they think is like another piece on their plate instead making it part of their living, because at the end they are living it every day, the internal audit, without the record of doing it. The simplest thing of going and talking to the other department is an internal audit at the end of the day. So one of the biggest things is like train them good, look for a good trainer, make sure they are trained and they understand what they are doing.
Yes.
So they don't see it like a threat.
Yeah, I mean, during your training, right? This is not a PowerPoint training of, okay, we're here to train on internal audits, and here's what we're, no. Ideally, what you should be doing is mock interviews, right? And mock audits of different systems. Like, okay, guys, we are going to go through and do a mock audit of document control. I'm going to be the document control administrator. Here's the procedure. I want you guys to ask me questions, right? And then you can help guide and give them more understanding, right? don't give them a PowerPoint training and say, okay, off you go, right? Because they're going to be like, what do I
What?
do? Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yeah. So that is a main key here. Like make them participate. This is more a training on hands that a PowerPoint presentation. Maybe the PowerPoint will help them understand the basic requirements of the standard. But
yeah,
really what I normally do, like, okay, do your PowerPoint, but the first internal audit, make sure that you as the manager of the program, you go with them and you do it with them, not by yourself. Do it with
right.
them to make sure that they understand the what type of questions you need to ask, how they approach them, because if they get mad with you, because normally when they start finding issues with like the gaps, the auditees start getting mad, and
Yeah.
sometimes they get very defensive. Like, how do you deal with that too? So make sure that you can deal with that too.
People skills, right? Yeah.
People skills, and
Right.
that's
Oh, yeah. If you go in an internal audit with an attitude of gotcha, you're not doing that right.
yes,
Right. Oh, right. No, 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 no,
no,
no. Right.
exactly.
Austin
And
makes a great point here. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And one of the things I always tell them, this is a constructive program, not a destructive program. So when you go in, even that you are the auditor, you are part of the team at the same time. So whatever the gap you find, at one point is going to affect your department or any other department. So make sure that you feel with them the pain, and always try to guide them the best you can. Do
Right.
not try to solve the issue, because you are not the expert of the department. Let them think about it,
Yeah.
but try to give them as much guidance of that you can, on telling them what can happen if this continue, or what other departments can impact if this continue.
Exactly.
So it's a
Yeah.
different way to approach them. And that's something I explained. And during your real audits, this will not happen. You only have a yes or a no, you have it or you don't have it. But in this one, it's also part of you are the team. You are growing with them.
Yeah.
So help without doing it yourself.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So Austin makes a great point here. So they need to understand what they're doing, but why they're
Why
doing it,
they're doing
right?
it. Hmm.
So quick story on that. So early on in my career, it was my first role heading up quality for a company, and I was out on the floor, and there was some foreign material issues that had happened, right? And so I was kind of helping them investigate and things like this, and I was looking for the basics around GMPs, and I noticed that there was a lady who had false fingernails on. And I went up to her and I said, are those false fingernails? That's not allowed for the GMPs. I was more diplomatic than that, but that was the conversation. And she's like, oh, no, 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 no. These are not false fingernails. These are bonded. These can't come off. Therefore, it's okay. And it doesn't say in the GMPs that I can't wear these. Right. And I'm like, okay. So I went back to my office, and this is the attitude I had, which was wrong. I'll show her. Right.
Yes.
So I actually called beauty salons and said, hey, this whole bonded nail thing, what is it? And so she explained it, how it works and how you glue these things on. And I'm like, well, can these come off? And she's like, oh yeah, if you soak your fingers in like acetone or whatever it is, the solution, they'll come off. And I'm like, ha. So I rewrote the GMPs, and at this point in time, the GMPs for this company were like almost 40 pages long. It was crazy.
Oh my God.
And that section in there around foreign materials, right? You can't wear rings, you can't, have your, blah, blah, blah. It listed out all these individual elements. And so she went through that list and said, well, bonded fingernails on there, therefore I can wear them. And so I'm like, okay, I will add that on. Right? So I put bonded fingernails in that document, got it approved, and went out and showed her. I'm like, you can't wear those anymore. Completely wrong wrong approach. And what I did later on, as I got smarter, I looked at the GMPs and I said, to Austin's point, which is why this triggered this, thank you, Austin, is why do we have this in the GMPs? We have it in there to keep foreign material out of the product, right? We want to make sure that we're not introducing things. That's the function. Mm-hmm. So I rewrote the entire GMPs after I learned that lesson. And I shortened it down to I think it was 4 pages, if that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in that section around that, I said, we want to make sure in our company that no foreign material gets into our product, because we want to make sure our customers are safe. So, anything that could potentially get in the product is not okay. Here are a few examples. Okay? Now I'm covered, right? Now I
Yeah.
can interpret that and explain to that person why she can't do that without trying to play a game, right? Which is what
Exactly.
it's become, right? It was management versus the plant on how can I get around these rules, right? It's like hairnets, right? There's always people in plants who want to see how far they can get the hairnet up on their head. And it's like, no. The purpose of the hairnet is to keep hair out of the product, right? Is that doing that when you're doing that? It's not, right? So then you get to explain why they need to do this, right? And this gets back to what I was talking about earlier too, Luisa, which is you have to be able to tell your story. This is why we do
Exactly.
these things. And if you're just right, keep anytime, right? This is human nature. If you push somebody, they're going to resist.
Exactly. Yeah, and a lot of people also, if they're coming from another company, and they wanted to see the program as they used to see it in the other company. So each company will be different because of the why. Even if they are sister plans, I always tell them the why is so important, because even you're doing the same process, you have different people, different cultures. Every single piece of it will change the whole system, right? And they say like, oh, that's true. When you explain the why, that is when we do trainings, I tell them more that I'm here to educate you than train you, because I want you to understand, so you can also explain later on if you want to do this training to your to the employees, right? Why you have to do the things, why we are trying to avoid. And internal audits, what is trying to avoid that the system is coming apart. So that's why a lot of people are stressed to have that done. But at the same time, is your best friend, because you can be able to cut anything before it goes make a big impact in the industry or in your systems.
100%. Now, have you found, so when you're going out and you're auditing and looking at systems for your clients and things like this, are there any areas within the standards or the different programs that companies have that the internal audits reveal time and time again problems? Is there kind of a commonality you find, or I'm just kind of curious on that side?
Yeah, normally in the sanitation department, sanitation and maintenance is normally the ones that you have more. And this is because they are doing sanitation and maintenance every single day. So it's something that is always happening in big scales or small scales. So during the internal audit is when they have more gaps in these pieces. Because the other ones are like the receiving guys checking inbounds or the shipping out outbounds. It's a very methodic thing. But in the sanitation, because anything can happen, and also the maintenance department is when you find more issues with internal audits in the two departments.
That's a good point. Yeah, because I mean, too, if the plant is of any size, odds are you have a sanitation shift that's dedicated just to sanitation, their own crew, and most times they're at night, right?
Exactly.
And nobody sees what they're doing, and you just assume you come in the morning, the equipment's clean, yay, right? But high turnover, right? It's a hard job.
It's a really hard job.
Yeah, if you're in a wet plant, right? I mean, you're working all night in the middle of the night. You're wearing all this protective gear. It's hot. You're wet. You know, you're just at the end of the day, you're just like, oh, right, and you're ready to go home. And I always used to feel bad because if something happened, I was investigating, I would have to call the sanitation manager during the day and wake him up. And you're just like, oh, gosh, I don't want to do that. Those guys work so hard and they're underappreciated.
Yes, and the other thing is that they give us, every time I see it, they give it less and less time. So they had to clean everything and do maintenance in a couple of 5 hours. So then they start fighting together. And one of the most things that I always see is that the equipment, the PMs are not completed, or the sanitation, they had to re-clean several times because maintenance come in, fix it, and then they leave everything there. So when they do the pre-ops, they show up that the equipment wasn't clean. So you had to make production stop, bring production to clean. So they start having a big issue. So, but the internal audit do the same thing. So you show to the plant manager, like, guys, we really need to give them more time to clean, or we need more people to clean, or more people in maintenance department. But right now there are
And when
the
you're
two big ones.
Yeah, and when you're doing these internal audits and looking at these programs too, Luisa, you may find out that there's language barriers. Maybe the people who are following the processes don't speak English or don't understand really well, and you can figure that out, because people, if you just go up and ask them, it's like, do you understand this? What are they going to do? They're going to go, yeah.
Yep.
Right. Okay, show me. Right. So you have to be able to understand that, right? There may be a barrier there that you didn't even know was there.
Yes. And that's true. And but talking about training in other languages,
Yeah.
we had been doing that a lot in the facility. So if they need another language, make sure that the procedures, you don't need to come to translate everything. It's only the papers, that procedures and forms and training material that they need to understand, translated to their own language. So
Right.
you're making sure that they understand what they have to do and why.
Mm-hmm.
And here in the US, and in general, but in the US, you have a big culture mix. And you have people from everywhere, a bunch of languages in one single area.
Oh yeah.
So, and normally the sanitation guys is the crew is so big because they had to have special skills. That is where the ones that you will have more language in one single team. So make
Yeah.
sure they understand, and make sure that when you do internal audits, that's something I always ask, because then is that if go do an internal audit in sanitation, but do it when they are there. So
Mm-hmm.
you can see it, to see the implementation, and also you can talk to them and make sure that the programs are effective. That
Yes.
wherever we have, because it's very nice, as you say, read it here, but when the sanitation crew is not there, you cannot ask anybody and say, "Oh, sure, we have everything." But is this really helping them or helping you? Is a system or not?
Right. And which is why, right? So this is why it's so important, as the head of the program, right? You're the quality manager and you're managing the internal audit program, that you have someone on that team who speaks, in this example, Spanish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want, let's say that you're doing the sanitation crew, right? And you're going out and doing the audit, and you ask the sanitation manager, to your point, is everybody following this? And he goes, yeah. Right. You're stuck. You can't ask the people, oh, well, can you please show me how to do this? Right. So it's very important to have someone on the team who's not from that department, who
Yes,
speaks the language. Right.
it speaks the language.
So, well, and plus two, that shows just, courtesy and respect for the people who are working, and that you want to hear directly from them, and people respond to that.
Yep, it's food. We go back to food safety culture.
Yeah.
Food safety culture is making sure everybody's doing the right thing because they're convinced they know what they are doing. They own the process, and not because QA said so. Because normally, because the QA manager told us, like, yes, but why? Why you are
Mhm.
doing it? Why you want to do it?
Yep. And part of this too, right, and this is an important point around this too, and this is something, Luisa, that used to drive me crazy, right, is something happens in the plant, and we'll say products on hold or something like this. And every time this would come up, and it's one of my missions in life to kind of beat this out of management, is, oh yeah, we've got product on hold, we had a quality issue. No, I didn't make it, right?
Yeah.
We had a production issue, right? Why did we have a production issue, right? Because essentially, right, and this gets back to our desire a lot of times to hold things and manage it, is our job is to help fix the issue. But until you understand the owner of the issue, right? So if product is on hold, and let's say that the machine went down, right? That's a production issue. That's not a quality issue. Right? They failed to meet the standards of the company, right? And your job is to help figure out why. But just like the internal audit team, right? And this is, I think, a hidden benefit, is as the head of the systems, this helps to develop you as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
You begin to see things from a wider picture, because I see this quite a bit, right? Is there's this false belief in quality that if we get really, really good at what we do, right, and we get certified and we're PCQI and black belt and blah, 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 that then we will get noticed and we'll get promoted and our career will flourish. Wrong. If you get really, really specialized in what you do, guess what senior management sees? Oh, here's somebody who's really good at what they do. Let's keep them where they're at.
Yep.
And you're going to get really frustrated and have no idea why. Right?
Exactly.
And that applies to everybody, right? You're not exempt from this, right? This applies to everybody on the management team, right? You have to grow your perspective and look at the company. And this then becomes one of the tools you can use to help get team members, right? is, so let's say, for example, you and I are an internal audit team and we need to audit corporate, and we need to understand corporate procurement processes and how things are acquired and how R&D works and things like this. Now, all of a sudden, right, we're getting exposure at corporate. It's like, oh yeah, Bryan and Luisa from the plant are asking questions around how we manage this. Those two are sharp, right? They know what they're doing. We should potentially look at them for other opportunities in the company, right?
Yes.
Exposure.
Yes. And feel comfortable, like also to talk to people. And
Yes.
and another thing, they see that you are not afraid to ask them really politely, because everything has to be polite, but to ask them, okay, how you are doing this? I only want to understand how I get this product at the end. How do I get this product? How do you select the supplier? Why you didn't select another one? So when they start asking questions, they start understanding too what impact they will do in the plant if they make any changes. Because sometimes, as you said, procurement, like, oh, marketing want a green thing and they buy this green thing, but when they get to the plant is like, oh my God, it's an allergen, we cannot run it. So is when they start also talking to the rest of the company see how the impact of each one of the systems will make also in the plant.
Yeah.
It's a whole system. At the end, it's a whole system.
Right. And if you're successful, right, and let's use this example with procurement at corporate, and you're able to have a successful audit and help them improve their processes and get a good understanding of it, when you walk away, they're going to be like, that's good. That's good. Somebody gets me. Somebody understands what I do, right? I'm just not caught in my little box, right? So that's a good benefit as well.
Yeah.
So, so we'll kind of bring this back up to the 30,000 foot level now, right? So internal audit, doesn't matter if you're SQF or whatever, you have to have an internal audit program because everybody has systems and you have to make sure your systems work well.
Yes.
Don't do this on your own. Do not ever, ever, ever. You will fail 100%.
Completely agree.
Get training and get as many people as you can trained on internal audits. Get management support. You need, if you're in a plant, you have to have the plant manager buy-in, and the plant manager needs to be the person, because that's the boss, going to the other department heads and saying, are you doing this? You need to do this, right? Without that, you're going to be caught in a cycle of begging and pleading, and you're really not going to like it. The other piece is use this for growth, right? Everything needs to be audited, but prioritize, right? What are the most important, to your question, your point, Luisa, right? What are the programs that if they fail, you're going to have huge problems? GMPs, PM, maintenance, sanitation, all these types of things, right? These are very, very important, right? Do you need to audit document control every month? Probably, for the system side of it, probably not, right? You do need to audit it to make sure it's working, because you have to have a very strong person managing document control to make sure unapproved documents don't get in the system. But and that's your job as the manager here, right? And figure out ways, and we've given some good examples here, I think, today, of how you can use the carrot instead of the stick to get team members. It's like, okay, guys, thanks for being on the team. Glad you're here. Here's how this is a benefit to you. Here's how this helps you. Here's how this makes your systems better. And guess what? People who come and audit you are going to have a better appreciation for how you do things, right? And they may have some good ideas. And then, right, always focus on plan, do, check, act, right? What do we do? How do we do it? Are we really doing it that way? And if not, what do we do to course correct? Do we modify the procedure? Do we change it? Or do we keep it as it is and make sure that people understand this is how they're supposed to do it?
Yep, completely agree. Yes.
Yeah. So we talked to you a little bit about, are there any upcoming programs or things you'd like to mention to people today, or anything coming up with your group?
We do a lot of training on site, and one of the biggest training right now we are promoting is the BRC conversion, from version 8 to version 9. It's a 1-day course if they already certified plants, and if not, it's a 2-day course. So to introduce the BRC version 9, and if they need any training, we do it normally on site, but it can be also done by online. And what we do is we divide it in 2 days or one single day with 8 hours. So that is one of the biggest one we are doing right now.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, so it's a good point because if your system isn't improving and growing, it's degrading and failing, right? So you
Yes.
need to keep on top of it. So if people are interested in that, Luisa, where can they go to find more information?
We have a www.acedglobalconsulting.com LLC. So it's our website. So there you can find our email. So you can send us a request there, and we will contact you. We have uh, several people that speak different languages, so we can adjust the training to your needs. And
Nice.
we cover literally like America, Asia, Europe, and Australia.
Wow. Very good. So ACET, ACET Global Consulting
Consulting.
LLC.com.
See.com.
Got it. Okay. I'll put that in the comments here so people have it. There we are. Great. Anything else in closing you'd like to mention or?
Uh, Thank you, Brian. It was a pleasure talking to you. I really like internal audits. When I was in the plant, was the first. I started with BRC, so when we have internal audit, it was very difficult to us to understand and take out our mind from a GMP inspection to do a really an internal audit. And now that I have been an auditor and I'm an auditor, I start loving this program because it gives you this window of what is happening in the plan when you really use it. It's your best friend at one point and the whole time.
I love it. Yep, it is your best friend. And hopefully today we've given some people some ideas on how they can improve their systems and how to approach internal audit, right?
Internal
So
audits.
it's your
Don't be
friend.
afraid.
Right? That's a
Yes,
great
don't
way.
be afraid. It's your friend. It's a
Yep,
constructive thing.
it is. So thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate you being here to watch us. I know that an hour out of your busy schedule is a lot, so thank you for joining us. Hopefully we've been able to provide some value. And join us back here next week, right? We're here every Friday at the same time. So 8 a.m. Mountain Time for me, 10 a.m. on the East Coast or wherever you're in the world at. Please come and join us for the next Food Safety Chat. Bring your favorite beverage, join us in a toast, and hopefully learn a little bit from your fellow food safety and quality professionals. So thank you, Luisa. Really great conversation. I
Thank you,
enjoyed it.
Brian.
Everybody have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you back here next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.